All right, everyone, welcome back. This is Beneath the Helmet Season 4, if you can believe it. This is episode 104. I am joined today with a former Team Canada baseball player, retired lieutenant from the fire service, and owner of the Complete Athlete, who is also a mental performance coach. Please welcome to Beneath the Helmet Season 4, Brad Robinson.
It's time to ignite your soul and unlock your full potential. Join us on Beneath the Helmet, the podcast exploring firefighters' health and wellness. Hosted by retired Fire Chief Arjuna George, our podcast is the perfect place to start your journey towards becoming the best version of yourself. So come on, let's join the conversation and find out what sets your soul on fire.
Welcome to the air, Brad.
Thank you, Arjuna, and thanks for having me, man. This is, we've had some great conversations already, and I'm excited to just be here and, see where it goes and have some good banter back and forth for sure.
You betcha. Yeah, and share some wisdom, right? Share some wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yes.
So I'll tell the listener a little bit about who you are and kind of, what brought you to the fire service to start with.
Mm.
And then just touch on maybe a bit of the exit of the fire service and how that came to be.
Okay. Yeah, no, thank you. I think the fire service, I was drawn to it because of my athletic background. I grew up here in the Lower Mainland, Port Coquitlam, and played a lot of sports. I was raised with my mom, single mom. She was amazing, not knowing at the time, but looking back at it and just, it was a really nice experience. There were some things that I learned about, in therapy that I experienced in my childhood that I didn't know affected, things in the future. But overall, I remember my childhood and growing up being, I didn't miss out on anything, put it that way. We did stuff as a 3-person unit, me, my mom, my sister. And I played sports all my life, played every sport, didn't matter what it was for me. I was always wanting to be out there moving around, running around, and really just was drawn more to baseball there at the end. As you get older, about 14, 15, back in that time, we specialized a little bit later. They specialize pretty early now in sports, at an earlier age. But, baseball was it for me, and ended up, having some success there, and was lucky enough to play for junior national team, played some college baseball, and even had a pro contract offer, with the California Angels, and played baseball into kind of like around my mid-20s. After that, after baseball, it was one of those times when it was kind of like, I don't really know what else to do here. Always thought about the fire department because I thought of, the camaraderie, the team environment, the physical. I really enjoyed the physical part of, life. So I figured that would be a good fit. But it took me a while to get there. I tried a couple other things. I bartended for a while. That was not a great lifestyle, health-wise and stuff like that. But, taught me that I did not want to do that for very long. Worked a little bit in my dad's insurance company, family business. That also showed me that I did not want to be part of that at that age, at that time in my life anyways, which actually, pushed me into really doing what I wanted to do and applying to the fire department or fire academy at the JI, the Justice Institute of BC. Did all the necessary things, got in 2000 or 2001, I think, somewhere around there. And then got on as a volunteer right away in Port Moody, in the fire service. And it was so amazing. I loved it more than anything. Being in that environment, and then got hired about 3 years later, full-time in Port Moody after, applying to every department under the sun, and learned a lot and got told no a bunch more times. I got a couple interviews, didn't make it past the interview. And sometimes you got to that physical testing, and sometimes you got to the written, and sometimes you didn't even get a sniff. So it was just like, it was a unique experience. Definitely. I feel like it built a little bit of resilience too for, it's really what I want to do. So how can I do it different, next time to get a different result? So that kind of, I think it is a process that can build some resilience if you look at it that way. And then, yeah, full time in the fire department. Yeah, honestly, looking back, it was an incredible time. Getting on as a probationary and or firefighter. Got on with 4 other friends of mine, who were all actually volunteers in Port Moody as well. So it was kind of neat to get on with guys that you were already, friends with and kind of had that bond with already, because we were all volunteers together. So all the shenanigans and, making muffins and doing all the chores and just the recruit stuff, we all got to share that together. So that was kind of cool. Pretty amazing experience there.
Fire hall muffins, eh?
What's that?
Fire hall muffins.
Fire hall muffins. And
Classic.
even if they liked them, they still, found a way to either throw them back at you or telling you they're not good or whatever. But anyways, regardless, it was a great experience. Being a rookie, and I just put my head down and just, did the work, and I loved every minute of it. I didn't care whether I was cleaning a toilet or whatever. It was just like, I knew everybody else had to do that before me. And it just, it was just, great experience when I look back on it. And then, became a first responder instructor pretty early on in my career. So that was kind of interesting. That was, probably wasn't the optimal thing to be right away, when I wasn't actually a very good first responder, probably to be an instructor. But that's just the way it worked in our department, because we were very small. We were only 20 members plus, or 20, 24, 26, something like that. But we were opening up a new hall. So we were the next group of firefighters to open up that second hall after the fire hall study was done for Port Moody. So that was just the way it was. I just got hired at that time when we needed certain things done. And kind of reading in your book there a little bit, I purchased your book and started reading it, and I love it, man. A lot of great stuff in there. I'm not that far in, but just to your point of being in a small department where you do everything, right? And so that was kind of like in Port Moody too. Definitely not as much as I, was reading that you had to do, because we had a little bit more resource, I think, but definitely, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff, right? Yep. So, on one side, it's really good because you're learning the job and you're learning everything. And so that was good that way. And then kind of got promoted fairly quickly up to, from firefighter up into driver. And so I drove for most of my career, which was, again, amazing. And then was promoted into the officer seat, and, took a while to get confirmed lieutenant, but did a lot of lieutenant shifts, and then a lot of acting captain shifts as well. And ended my career I retired in 2019 as a confirmed lieutenant. And to back it up a little bit, I actually worked my last shift in about 2017. 2016 had some, and probably, 2014, 2015, started to notice things, weren't feeling well, physically, but also, mentally as well. And just wasn't myself. Started to really minimize, and really simplify my life. Like, I felt very overwhelmed. I felt, like I couldn't deal with stuff at home. I couldn't deal with stuff, and actually at work, I felt probably the most normal almost which is, an interesting conversation probably that we could have too. Working with my clients as a counselor now too, I noticed that that is very common. Whether it's there's different reasons for that, but anyways, felt okay at work early on, and then it did start to, work was being affected, and me, not really wanting to go to calls anymore and trying to avoid things. And, just got to the point where I was like, even in my truck, and I would be driving home and start crying. Right. And just like emotion, just as soon as I left the hall, it was like these just range of emotions. And, um, yeah, I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was crazy. I thought my brain was broken, all these different things because I never experienced anything like this. But it was affecting my whole life, like physically. And I was, getting stomach issues, fatigue, like all these things. And I was I was a IFF, like I was a pure fitness trainer. And, we had we were starting to create some good routines around the hall, and like starting to eat better, and crews were exercising. And we even ran our own IFF pure fitness training, like brought in the guys from the IFF to do it. And we organized that. And it was, so we were very health conscious, there. And, so it wasn't something that I ever thought was going to happen to me. And I don't know if we ever know or would think that it would happen to anybody, but I just, was unaware that this was even a possibility for me. Um, but there was indicators when I look back at it, definitely. Especially, I know you talk a lot about the moral injuries, right? And just like the support, like for me, I perceive that like kind of as the, support from from our chief at the time too. Just and nothing against anybody. Like honestly, like this is not against anybody. It's an unawareness of, if you don't know, you don't know. And everybody's doing the best they can with what they have, right? And so at the time it was like, something didn't meet the criteria. Hey chief, we need to maybe have a debrief here or bring someone in. Like guys are not, well, it doesn't meet the criteria. It has to be here or else I can't call someone in. And it's like just running into things like that were roadblocks that I knew that I needed. I started to feel that I maybe needed some stuff, and some help that way. And it just wasn't supported. And that feeling of not being supported just was compounding over time too. Right. So it was like all of those things. I know I kind of bounced around a lot, but like, it was like all of those things just going through, myself and I'm sure other guys too. And yeah, I started to kind of mid 2016. We actually, beginning of the year, we were having some windstorms. I don't know if you remember the windstorms there of 2016, but
Oh yeah, big time.
yeah, and
Amazing.
yeah, and it was Port Moody, got some old growth happening and whatever. We had this one call where this tree fell on a house, and it was like not a good scene. Anyways, and so that call really was kind of like, if you wanted to say there was one thing that like pushed me over the edge, I think that was probably the one where I'm just like, I can't, like, there's something like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to deal with this. This is making me feel awful. And, it's affecting everything, and I can't sleep, and I'm waking up in the middle of the night because we got a big tree in our backyard. And as soon as it's windy, it's like, would like go into the hallway of our house, and like, because I felt it was safe in that place. And, because I had to get out of bed because of what I was, thinking about from the call, because of what happened to that person in the house and all this stuff. Right. So just all of that, I know that, we don't want to maybe get into that part of it, but like, because I think it's important to like, that to know like all the stuff that I've experienced too. It's like, it is about that, but it's also like, I hope to be able to, in our conversation today is to share what I've learned from
Cool.
this, not just to focus on, that part of it. We all know that that stuff happens.
It helps set the stage for
Yes.
conversation for sure.
Well, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going around in circles a little bit, but I will get there. Um, so that was kind of all happening. Physically not feeling great, mentally not feeling great, affecting all these parts of my life. And I'm sure, like, even just reading a little bit of your book too, I'm sure I was experiencing burnout. I was experiencing, PTSD symptoms. I was experiencing anxiety, depression, anger, nervous system irregulation, like just all over the place, like all these things, right? And and, it was the one day I was on my last shift. It was the beginning of December, and then it was going on a block of holidays. And I just remembered like lying there going, please, just no calls. I just want to go home and be safe. And that was my last official, like, full shift of, in the fire hall, not knowing that, but went off and just was like, kind of, that set the stage for me to go into, start diving into myself and what was going on, and, led to years of and constant healing and growth. And, not that it wasn't hard, but it was definitely where I needed to go, to, feel like my life was going to be okay. And not look at, that it was the fire service or this job or that job or anything. It wasn't about the job. It was about, something wasn't right with me as a person. Right. And, so that's kind of, I guess, where I got to at the end of, the fire service piece. It was still a few years, I did a bunch of things and tried to go back to work and, that type of stuff. But, ultimately I felt like it was probably best for my health and my family and everybody else that, the more I learned about the brain and the body and the connection of everything, um, I just felt more drawn to being re-educated and healing as much as possible so that I could maybe help others, so they didn't ever feel like I felt, right? Like it was the worst, that time was, the worst, one of the worst parts of my life as far as like pain wise, emotional, physical, like all that stuff. Right. Um, and now I feel like if I can be the person that maybe helps one person so they don't ever have to feel that way, um, you know, uh, then that's a win for me and for, hopefully other people too.
So I'm curious, you talked about your little vacation block at Christmas there. Curious to hear what was the moment that changed for you? Where it's like, okay, I got to start taking care of myself versus going back to work and next block. Because it sounds like you took that break and never went back to work.
Yeah.
From what your story sounds like.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious what kind of connected for you there to like, all right, this is the route I got to go.
Yeah. You know what? If I'm completely honest about that, I, in my heart, I knew I was never going back. There was just something about what happened, what was going on with me. I didn't know it like consciously, but I think unconsciously, it was like, I knew that I wasn't going back somehow. I didn't consciously know that or decide that. So I think that unconscious piece of it where it was like somewhere in me knew that I needed to heal and take care of myself. And so leaving that after that shift was more like I felt like I could breathe again. because I knew I wasn't going back. I didn't ever have to do anything. I didn't ever have to do that anymore, even though I didn't know because I wasn't probably thinking logically, using the old prefrontal cortex there, right? With my rational thinking and logical because I was in crisis mode. But somewhere it was like I could breathe. It was like this relief, even though I didn't have any answers or anything. Um, and it really just sent me, my desire was to heal, not to go back to work. I think that that's, when I look at like working with WorkSafe through that process too, you know, their goal is to get someone back to work. It's not to heal. And I felt like I needed to heal. So it wasn't like my intention was more than just wanting to go back. If I healed and I felt like I could go back, then yes, absolutely. It wasn't about that. It was just, I wanted to heal, man. And I was hurting. And, I had, when I was, had some suicidal ideation and I was convincing myself that my family and everybody would be better off without me because we'd get this much money and we'd have this and the house would be paid off and all this stuff. And I wouldn't be a burden because I'm just a burden sitting here because nobody wants to talk to me. Nobody wants to, and I don't want to talk to anyone else. I really do want to talk to someone, but I can't because, I just want someone to ask me, how I'm doing, but I don't want them to ask me, but I want to tell them. Like it was just this, crazy kind of, thing that I was going through in my head. But it ultimately came from a place of I need to heal myself because I also believe that, the mind, body, brain connection is a real thing. And that, just healing one part of it, maybe doesn't heal everything. But it's a start, right? The understanding of what was going on and, having like, I needed to hear that I had PTSD or not that it, and that's, I would love to talk about that because I read that part in your book where you talked about just a little bit about, the PTSD versus injury. Super, like, I love it. At that time, I just needed to hear something that was like, that I wasn't crazy and that there was actually something that they could say, this is wrong with you. This is how we can move forward by diagnosing you with this, then we can have a plan. And I just needed to hear that. It wasn't that it was PTSD or it could have been like, it didn't matter what it was, but I just needed to hear that. I feel a little bit different about that now, in the work that I do. And I loved your piece on, in your book about the post-traumatic stress disorder versus, the injury, you know, calling it an injury and the perception of that and how powerful words are. I think that is incredibly insightful. Just, shifting the language around to, um, you know, not even soften it, but just to, you know, when it's a disorder, you know, it's like I have PTSD. So now that's part of my identity, right? Versus, I'm injured and we know that we can heal injuries, right? And so like there's a different maybe belief system or, outcome generated by using that injury versus disorder. But anyways, I guess that's probably a whole other thing, but that was really stood out for me in your book. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think if you boiled it down, it's around hope, right?
Yeah.
If that's how I would kind of classify it as like if you're say you have an injury, you can probably heal from an injury, and that
Yeah.
gives you some hope
Yes.
just
Yeah.
with that single word, right? So I don't know if I've also heard a lot of people that talk in the mental health field about, no, it is a disorder and we got to recognize it as a disorder. So there's two sides to the
Yeah.
coin, but yeah, I think it is an injury. When you say it's an injury, it's something you can probably heal from, versus being stuck with it as part of your identity for the rest of your life, right?
Right. Well, and I think too, in my case, I can only speak for my case, but work safe gave me a permanent disability,
Mhm.
post-traumatic stress disorder, permanent disability. So that also, kind of guided my outlook on the rest of my life. Like, what does that mean? Like, and if that's the case, well, then, it was just, yeah, like it is, I think that there is definitely some usefulness to diagnosis and that. Um, but I also think it's important to, know that that's not a hard line, right?
The end of your story.
Right.
Yeah. 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 And it also goes down to name it to tame it, right? So even emotions is
Yeah.
something that I learned going through that whole
Yeah.
process of, I never said I was angry. I never said I was, because I never said it, I never expressed anger.
Right.
If I could name it and say, man, I'm angry about this, I think my nervous system would have said thank you versus just ignoring it and pushing it down, right? So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, because, that makes a lot of sense because it's almost like naming it too is kind of like we're accepting that we're angry. Okay. So I'm angry, then I can, change it if I need to, or, but if we just ignore it or fight it, then we're not able to, really move forward with it. Right. And that's where we kind of maybe even blame people and
oh, yeah,
all that stuff. Right. So
totally. Totally.
yeah, no, I love it, man.
I'd love to jump back to your little part about feeling safer at work and more at
Mhm.
ease at work than going home. And as your new career, you're
Yeah.
dealing with a lot of people in coaching, but also in counseling.
Yeah.
What do you think's what's behind that principle? Is there something that's you've been thinking about, or
Um,
'cause I'm assuming other people probably feel the same because I know I did as well, and I've heard it from
yeah.
others.
Yeah.
So,
And like working with some clients, I'm working with some firefighters, some first responders in my practice as well. And it's just such a common, you know, when I hear things, it's a very common theme. I feel okay at work. It's weird. I just feel okay at work. And as soon as I leave work and I go home and it's like, then, I get this overwhelming feeling and, whatever that is, but for that person, but the safeness at work, I haven't come to any conclusions about it. I'm just really taking in all the information, on, why that is. And maybe it could be because you have, when you think about like teams, shared adversity is kind of like one of the things that it actually brings teams closer together, right? So maybe there's a deeper part of that, the shared adversity piece, and that we have all experienced this stuff. So this person understands me, or these people understand me more. And I don't have to explain it because they were there too. Um, I think there's a lot to that. Um, yeah, because it is like, if you look at, I mean, it just depends on what the person's struggle is as well, right? Yeah. Somehow, some way, it's a safe place in your mind for that person to be, even though it's potentially the place that's giving you the most grief in a way.
in the recent episode 100, where I got a chance to interview my family, one of the questions was when did you ever feel unsafe or or stressed or scared as a fire chief. And I said, honestly, as a fire chief, a firefighter responding to calls, that was all honestly my safe place. It was when things were not busy, not chaotic, that is when stuff started to come up, right? So I wonder if there's a nervous system component to that where if you're constantly engaged, you don't have time to think logically about the problems you're facing. But when things calm down, then maybe you have that space, the capacity to start thinking more, right? Which can bring up, anxiety or depression or anything like that, right? So just a thought that popped on my mind while
Yeah.
you were talking.
No, you're exactly right. That, the nervous system regulation is as a, first responder, any first responder, who is constantly getting that adrenaline rush, right? And so you're constantly in that place of, just go, and your nervous system is on. And when we don't, I think that that's probably, I talk about it a lot in my workshop, that I'm working with new recruits right now. And it's, we don't really intentionally regulate our nervous system in the fire hall. It's not something we practice, right? We do it with athletes, more now. And so we go for a workout, and maybe we stretch, or we just, sit down for a minute and just kind of relax and just kind of take it all in, right? Let our body kind of, come back. Whereas in the fire service, we are all gas, no brakes, right? There is no, it's a gas, there's, if you look at a gas pedal, brake pedal, we are gas, right? And then we're off the, maybe off the gas for a bit, but, on the gas. And like, these departments that are constantly just going, like, I was talking with someone recently who worked at Hall 2 in Vancouver, and it's like, there is no nervous time to regulate your nervous system, right? You're just gone. You're there and you're gone, and you're overdose, repeated. And so, I think one of the things that I'm trying to really find a way to introduce is like, how do we find a way to, in those situations, to intentionally regulate that nervous system, so that, because otherwise our body is constantly, on high alert. We're just sitting there waiting for that call. We're never coming down, from that, and like coming back to kind of neutral. And you're right. Maybe that happens when we leave work and we drive home for half an hour or whatever. And it's like, our body kind of naturally comes to it. And then you start thinking about, things, and then we start thinking about, oh, I know when I get home, this is good. I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do this and like all these things, right? And it's just, even though we are overwhelmed already at work, even though we don't know it because we don't give ourselves a chance to acknowledge it, that does start to come out. So I think you make a really good point there.
I think it's also a vicious circle, because when you have those painful thoughts when you're in that downtime, you want to fill it and get busy again. So you got a second job, or you do whatever you do to fill your time, just like you're at work, versus having some rest and digest time, right? So
you nailed it. That's like, the people that I'm working with, it's the default, right? Like what I believe is, somehow, if we can help people have a new kind of autopilot, a new default to be able to regulate, and I know it's not possible all the time, but if our default is to just do that, right? As soon as we start thinking about things, or, we distract ourselves and do something else. And sometimes you do need, I don't think that we don't need distractions sometimes, right? because that helps. And maybe your distraction is going to the gym or going for a walk or something like that. But
Healthy
um,
distraction.
yeah, totally. But if your default is to just constantly be busy, then, that was kind of like from what I learned, and this, I could be wrong, but initially like the 4 on 4 off was supposed to be so you had time to, you know, get back to normal before you had to go do all the abnormal stuff, right?
Not for a third job.
But now you get a side job and you
Yeah.
have this and and there is the reality of it, man, is like we have small kids and especially when you're, depending on when you were hired or whatever, you have small kids and I know you mentioned in your book how you and your wife did the handoff. Like, dude, my wife worked at ecom. So she would take our brand new newborn son, bring him to the hall. I was off at 6:30. We had early relief, so you could get off at 6:30 a.m. She would bring him to the fire hall, sit in the back parking lot till I was off at 6:30, and then she'd go to ecom and work at 7. And then she would meet me back at the fire hall when I'd have to come for night. Like it was just, so there are, definitely, real life things that we're all dealing with. And I think it's in our nature. We're helpers, we're doers, we want to fix things. And so that doesn't allow us to sit down and kind of like just for a little bit. Right. And that's what makes us successful too. Again, I was reading in the beginning of your book. It's like that high energy, like, and that is what, makes people successful. The most successful people, that's like, they're not satisfied with what happens. And, so I got to keep doing it and do this and do that. And I think that's across, a lot of different professions and just in people in general. Like, and there is a way, I believe, to be able to do that and operate at that high level and still be able to, and I guess have it not be at the detriment of your health.
Yeah. I think we can all be high performers
Yeah.
if we take recovery and rest as equally as important as preparation.
Yeah.
For sure. We can all be high performers. Doesn't mean we have to be lackers and,
No, you don't have to steer
lazy
it,
factors.
yeah.
No,
But you maybe do need to sit on the couch once in a while.
totally. Totally.
But that's hard for us to do. I know this firsthand. Like it just,
Yep.
I still, man, let's just like until 8 o'clock PM, I'm like, I can't sit down. Like and then, okay, 8 PM comes, okay, I'll watch the show with my wife and whatever, or something. But it's like, until then, it's like, in my head, it's like, there's things I can do. I got to send an email or I got to do this or, I got to make sure the garage is okay, whatever it is. Right. Like,
And it comes down to, for myself, it was guilt. If I did sit on the couch, I felt guilty that I was sitting on the couch.
totally.
I've processed and I've gone through that where I can sit on the couch and not feel guilty, but that took a long time, long time. So I'm curious,
Yeah.
you've done a lot of self-work, a lot of work on yourself.
Yeah.
What would be some of the modalities that really resonated with you that helped bring you back to who you are today, Brad?
Mhm. So I think first of all, it came from really truly wanting to heal, a deep desire to heal. Uh, first of all. So that allowed me, I believe, to focus on looking for things that were healing versus like, uh, I would try different things. I tried counseling, went for a bit, and then it was like, okay, I learned what I needed to learn. Now I'm going to go see a psychologist, um, which again, it was really great. Like I learned so much. I learned about tapping, which was useful for me, for anxiety, just to shift my state, just a quick, way to shift state so that, I don't stay in that place. So that was through a psychologist. Then I went to another counseling program that was more exploratory, um, kind of like looking at like a little bit psychology and counseling. So like a lot of kind of Freudian things and, like just different things that like really explored the past a lot for me, which I hadn't done before. And so that was good. So that helped me. But the thing that really that helped me heal, all of those things got me to a certain place that I needed at that time, was NLP, neuro linguistic programming. Um, Man, I'm lucky enough to have my mom is an incredible human, and I'm just like, you know, so grateful for her in my life, the way that she supported me. She had breast cancer very young, and really started to do some self healing, right? Not self, sorry, alternative healing methods for cancer. And she started a group called Breast Friends. And like, I think it's actually might even still be going. She's not part of it anymore, but like a support group for women. And she just did all these incredible things. And like, she's had cancer a few times. And like, this last one, she really had to do different things because she's a bit older, and it just got to a point where it was unmanageable the way she was doing it. But she's healed herself 2 or 3 times through, alternative methods, right? And then in that time, she also she was always a high performer. She worked for Mary Kay and like had the Cadillac, like the pink Buick, and like she won all these awards and like super, really good, and was a corporate trainer and all this stuff. And then she started teaching NLP and became a master practitioner and a master trainer and like all these things. And she's done it for like so many years. So my influence in my life, maybe even more unconsciously than consciously at that time, was that, influence. And so when it got to the point where I needed help, she helped me through some stuff. We did some timeline techniques, which is a method in NLP that really helps in a way that it almost heals the emotional piece of because I'll just simply say, we have a memory, we have that experience, and there's an emotion attached to that experience. So it basically is a method to detach the emotional piece. So all you have is the visual, kind of like the memory now. There's no emotion attached to it. So that when you think about it, there's nothing there anymore, emotionless. And that changed my life. That, like, especially for the trauma pieces that I was struggling with and the calls that I still was, really being troubled with, was absolutely life-changing for me. So as a result of that, I became a practitioner, and then I became a master practitioner of NLP, the neuro-linguistic programming, and that kind of started my work with, I was developing programs for firefighters based on that. And that really kind of like, that was like from a place of where I really started to realize, hey, we're people first. And so like not just focusing on one part of it, the physical or the tactical or, nutrition, hydration, all those things, but it was like the holistic, whole person approach to wellness and healing and performance and success and outcomes and like all that stuff. So that really was, again, like a game changer for me, and really helped me start developing, stuff that I was going to work with other people. And the perception, the one piece was like just understanding how our experiences are all unique. And, we have this We experience something, and everything that we experience is like raw data. There's no meaning to it until we put meaning to it ourselves, right? Like, and then it goes through, experience comes, or we see something, we hear something, we smell, we taste or touch, and it goes through all of our senses. And, there's like, we're taking in over 2 million, or actually they say now up to like 10 million pieces of information all the time, unconsciously. We don't even know what's happening, but our brain can only process like 5 to 9 pieces of that information at one time, or else we go into overwhelm. Right. And so our brain, so that we don't go into overwhelm, our brain, filters out information that's not important to us. And it's based on our values and our beliefs and our memories and our experiences in our life to form our own internal representation of what just happened. Right. And then from that internal representation, we have that emotional, how do I feel about what just happened? And all of that part of, we can't control any of that piece on like that, of how we feel about something initially is that just happens. Right. Um, but we can change that after we have that, we notice that experience. It's just like creating that awareness of, how do I feel about this? And is it going to, how's it going to affect what I'm trying to do, my behavior, my performance, that, and how is it affecting my physiology? How you feel affects your physiology inside your body. Like, when you are nervous, you get, you feel sick to your stomach, or, you start being anxious, or, your heart rate increases, and that's based on how you feel. And then also affects your body language, which is more like on the sports athletic side of it, like pretty impactful. But it also, we can change our state by simply sometimes changing our body language, and just, the superhero pose or whatever, right? Like just putting your shoulders back, putting a smile on your face, that type of stuff. I'm simplifying it, but so that piece of like how unique our own, and it's kind of like how we all I would say, like, wear our own glasses to view the world, right? Like based on our own experiences. And so that was, again, another piece that was like, oh, wow, this is like, if I can share this with people, and show them that, however they feel about anything is normal for them. It's not weird. It's not like, it's just normal. Right. And so that was again, a big piece to me for on the mental health side of things, like thinking that I was like broken or weird or whatever. And it's like, no, this is what you're experiencing and feeling this way because of your experiences in your life, and all those, things that have guided your perception of things, right? Of experiences. And so that was kind of like how I started to work on all of this. And, um, but the NLP was massive. Also, I was fortunate enough, after about 4 years of going back and forth with WorkSafe, for them to pay for to get me. I really wanted to get some more education, so I got a diploma in applied psychology and counseling as well, to just work a little bit deeper on a more, you know, clinical kind of level. I'm not a clinical counselor. I'm a registered professional counselor with the Canadian Professional Counselors Association, but the training is the same. It's just one's a master's degree, one's a competency-based program. So, and I can't diagnose people with things. That would be the one thing, which I feel like the work that I get to do is super impactful anyway. So it doesn't change what I do, whether I could diagnose someone or not. There's very good professionals that get to do that stuff.
Sure. So going through this whole self-healing journey,
Yeah.
what do you learn about yourself that just stands out, like number one, this gave me the gift of?
I would say this gave me the gift of honoring myself first. And the gift is not the honoring myself. The gift is honoring myself, not at the expense of anyone else, but honoring myself because it's not selfish. It's necessary for me to be the best version of myself so that I give what I need to give to everybody else and share what I need to share with everyone else. If I'm the best version of myself, if I, you know, if it's self first, it's not selfish. It's 100% necessary. Um, but not at the expense of anyone else.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think there's a term out there, but I just kind of resonate with this self-leadership,
Yeah.
leading self, right? Leading yourself first, right? And that's definitely not the culture that we see in the fire service,
Yes.
but it's a culture that you and I and several other amazing humans are trying to change that culture in the fire service where humans are first, right? So,
And it doesn't take away, like, I think too, like all of this stuff, like when we take care of ourselves and when we learn to regulate our nervous system and when we learn to slow down, I think that maybe, and I might be like mind reading here or just making my own assumptions, which I am. And so I will say, in my opinion, I think it might kind of come off as like, well, then I'm going to be soft. I'm not going to be able to grind it out and, do what I need to do because I need to be tough in this. And yes, here's the thing. You can be tough. You can still be tough. You can be, do the things that you need to do, however you need to do them, and still take care of yourself and perform the way that you need to perform. It doesn't make you any less of a man. It doesn't make you any less of a woman. It doesn't make you any less of a person. It makes you stronger. It actually allows you to do more if you look at it from a, physiological place. It allows you to do more, and do more better when we can just, and it's not about being soft. It's about honoring yourself and, kind of knowing that I'm a whole person and I can still be tough and strong and grind it out because you have to grind it out sometimes. That's life and that's the job, but not at the expense of your health or your family's health or your relationships or, all those things.
and just to echo that from my own experience, I would say going through that and learning about myself, putting myself first, actually made me stronger. So kind of going against that weak attitude made me stronger and actually more of a warrior because when I was going through burnout, I actually felt like a shell of myself.
Yeah.
So I actually didn't express myself. I actually probably wasn't nearly as strong as I was once I learned how to take care of myself.
Yeah.
So for the listener who's thinking, self-care, self-leadership is maybe on the weaker side of things, I think we both argue that it actually make you a stronger warrior or stronger firefighter because you're showing up as your best self, right? So, and once again, we talk about the industrial athlete, and from your background in sports, you don't see sports players playing every single game 365 days a year.
Yeah. And they're all the top performers are doing things to give themselves the best chance to be successful. We don't know what we're good. You don't know what's going to happen. But if we can give ourselves the best chance to be successful, which we do in our training, our training, our fire department training, our physical training, our tactical training, right? We just maybe could spend a little bit more time on ourselves and that part of it, because that's part of, giving myself the best chance to be successful, right? Because our training, we train to get to the point where, it becomes unconscious. We should be able to do the things that we are doing so very well so that we can make decisions without that cluttered head. Oh, how do I do this again? How do I, if I'm the pump operator, I can't remember how to send this to here and then all these things. Well, I don't want to be thinking about that while I'm trying to do it, because now I'm not even able to make decisions or problem solve or, the things that I'm going to need to do on the fire ground, so being prepared, not only, tactically and skill wise, but also, how do I regulate my nervous system so that I can start to think and make logical decisions and not just have emotional reactions, but have mindful responses to what I need to do on the fire ground. Cause it's not always easy out there. So
Like, and when there's not a call, what's the thing that's tying us up the most? Is HR issues with drama, all that other stuff. And most of that's probably down to capacity, nervous system dysregulation. All those are factors in that drama that we see in the firehouse outside of calls, right? So,
I'm like,
so is there
yeah,
a question that I have not asked you that you wish I asked you?
I don't think there's a specific question, but I would say is that we could probably talk for hours. I
Yes,
know I
indeed.
would love listening to some more of your stuff and definitely, reading your book. I'm intrigued about it. It's actually inspired me to, I've always thought about writing and I've written a lot. I have lots of content and stuff and I've already got a title and it's like, but it's just never kind of manifested. And I will say, just reading the beginning of your book, I'm like, I'm writing my book.
Let's do it.
So, yeah, I wouldn't say there's a question. I just think that, this conversation, we could talk about 100 different questions. And I think it would be an impactful thing for people. And I just really appreciate you having me on here because, the more we can, normalize and, just kind of like normalize, I guess, the human side of our job. Everybody is going to be better off that way. Right. And I think it's the way it's going. I do believe it's shifting. There's more openness to it. I just know because I'm getting good feedback in the stuff that I'm doing at, working with some of the fire departments I'm working with. And so I know it's changing. It's not everybody, and the fire service it will never change everybody, but the people that believe what we believe, it's going to help their people, in the long run.
Are you willing to share your book title?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's called Beyond the Big Red Truck.
Oh, nice. And that's coming out in 2027. I heard.
I had a podcast years ago, right away when I was like early on in my process of doing things, and that's what it was called, Beyond the Big Red Truck. And it was always like thought was like my life beyond the big red truck.
Love it.
And it's because, almost again, knowing that I maybe wasn't going back. But I have lots to share with, based on, my life beyond the big red truck. Right.
Well, writing a book was not just good to put out into the world, but it was very therapeutic as well.
Yeah.
So how can people learn more about you and maybe just give up a snapshot of what the complete athlete is and what services firefighters could seek you out for?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's, so just, I've got my website, thecompleteathlete.ca. I am on LinkedIn, under Brad Robinson, and I also have a complete athlete page on there, but I don't do much on there. It's mostly on my own page. Instagram is _ the complete athlete, and also Brad, I think it's B Rad Robinson or something, because I had to put a little hyphen in there. Facebook as well. I mostly do stuff on Instagram, and there's some contact methods on my website. I offer one-on-one performance coaching on there, mental performance coaching. And then also I have a section for first responders and firefighters where you can book some, if you feel like maybe we want to have a meet and greet and just kind of more on a counseling level. Then there's also an option on there to contact me through that as well. I do virtual and in person for people that are local, but yeah, lots of virtual, obviously. But yeah, I think that the complete athlete, it's, my intention is to help build stronger people first. So, from that place, we have the program called the High Performance Mindset for firefighters. and it's based on the stuff that I work on with athletes. High performance mindset, includes just, the perception piece that we talked about, understanding it's like a lot of self-awareness and, giving yourself the best chance to be successful by understanding, your mindset and what you believe about yourself and your abilities, affects the way that you show up to do whatever it is that you're doing. Right. And so we talk about mindset, we talk about emotional, regulation on the fire ground. So like, how do I show up? And when shit's hitting the fan, how do I show up and still perform in a way that's, going to give myself and everybody else the best chance to be successful. Talk about, building new routines, new habits, creating new autopilot pathways for us, nervous system regulation. And yeah, it's more, so it's not CISM. It's, there is a mental health component to it, but it's more about, performance and, being able to perform on the job, not just, not just show up and whatever happens, but really be prepared, as much as we can, creating awareness. And then I kind of molded it around fire prevention, sort of, where it's like, let's create an awareness that, hey, these things can happen. Then we have, some preventative measures, right? So how do we maybe try to prevent a few of these things from happening to me when I go to do these things? And then, okay, now it's action, right? These are happening. I'm noticing that I'm feeling this way and I need to, how do I, regulate or, create new pathways so that my default is actually performance-based and not just, emotional reaction, where maybe I'm not going to do exactly what I want to do. So just being in control, controlling what you can control. In sports, we say, be where your feet are. So it's like, wherever you are in that moment, that's what we want to be focusing on, right? If I'm at the front door going in entry, I want my mind to be on what I'm doing right now in this moment right here. If I'm a pump operator, my feet are here in front of the pump. That's where my focus needs to be. And, so be where your feet are is something we talk about a lot.
Basically another way of being present,
Yes.
another way of being grounded.
Yep.
Yeah. But probably in terms that other people would understand.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Well, it's been an honor to sit down and chat with you. And like you said, we could probably chat for hours on this. We're very similar in our mindsets of where we want to see the fire service grow and strengthen. So I'd love to have you back on the show at a later date and, fill in some gaps of areas that we want to chat more about. So thank you very much. And to all the listeners, hopefully you had a chance to listen to the story and some of the things that brought Brad back to the great human he is today, from the dark days, right? And we've all experienced the dark days, and it's nice to hear stories of traumatic growth versus the other way around. So until next time, stay well. All right, that's a wrap.
Thank you for tuning in to Beneath the Helmet. We hope that this podcast has provided you with valuable insights into the world of firefighters' health and wellness. Remember, caring for your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is crucial to achieving optimal performance. Join us next time on Beneath the Helmet for more inspiring conversations. Until then, stay well.